A new automated insulin pump has been cleared by the FDA. It's called Twiist, and it's expected to release later this year from Sequel MedTech. This is the first FDA-cleared pump to allow bolusing right from a smartwatch. It has the lowest target in the US of 87 milligrams per deciliter. It can be worn in a bunch of different ways, and it's powered by the Tidepool Loop algorithm, a cleared version of DIY Loop. Welcome to Diabetic. I'm Justin. I have type 1 diabetes, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and management with providers, tech leaders, and those thriving with diabetes. There is so much to learn about this new pump and its history. In fact, the pump company's co-founder, Dean Kamen, invented the first wearable insulin pump called the auto syringe. Oh, and he invented Segway. Seriously. I spoke with Sequel MedTech's CEO and co-founder Alan Lotvin about the incredible history, how the tube pump works, the various ways it can be worn. He gives us a demo and tells us what sets the algorithm and pump apart from the competition. This is huge. This is the first time an algorithm deriving from the DIY community has made it to a cleared insulin pump. And at the end of the conversation, I ask Alan about how willing Sequel is to work with DIY, and you'll be surprised by his response. I've just some announcements. I've got a new Discord that everyone's welcome to join. A lot of people are already on there, and they're talking about different technologies with me as well. There's a link to that in the show notes. I've also got a Patreon. On there you have access to behind the scenes of what I'm working on, exclusive interviews, and you get some more abilities on the Discord channel. Keep in mind that anything you hear on today's podcast or content on any of my pages is not medical advice. Always consult with your physicians before making changes to your healthcare. Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. Alan, thank you so much for coming on the show. I am so excited about this pump and its algorithm and to ask you everything about it. Before we get into all of that, can you kind of just tell me a little bit about the story behind this pump and behind Sequel MedTech?
Sure. So, as many people know, the first wearable insulin pump was invented by a guy named Dean Kamen in New Hampshire. Dean has been an incredibly prolific inventor and has really kept his eye on the drug delivery market and sort of said, when is there an opportunity to bring a new kind of disruptive technology to market, not just an opportunity but a need. And sort of, I guess, probably early in the 2000s, people started talking about continuous glucose monitors, and he really realized that the combination of a continuous glucose monitor, a pump, and an algorithm would create a closed loop. And he, from a purely engineering perspective, and obviously being incredibly familiar with engineering controls, said we need a device that's really designed for closed loop control from the start, that would have different characteristics with respect to how it worked and what it was able to do. And so he set about designing this device, and it took a long time to get it right. But one of the things that was amazing about this technology that we'll talk about is it's the only piece of technology that directly measures the volume delivered every time it fires. It doesn't guess based on how many times a motor runs and pushes a screw or a switch runs up and down. It actually measures precisely how much fluid is delivered each time it delivers. And so, fast forward a number of years, we decided to build a company around it. And Dean and one of our other founders asked me to run it, so I left my prior job running Caremark to come and do this. And the name came up because we thought that this really was the sequel to the first wearable insulin delivery device. So we thought it was a cute and clever name and descriptive of what we were doing, and that's why we did it.
Well, I'll admit to this. I didn't really know who Dean Kamen was. I knew of him before coming into this interview, but I was caught up on the fact that he's invented a fair amount of things. He invented the Segway, which there's a rumor that the inventor of Segway died on a Segway, which is not true. No. Dean Kamen is very much alive. But can you tell us more about the original? He developed the first wearable insulin pump, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Oh, so he tells it a much better story than I do, but I'll do my best job. So Dean's older brother, Bart, was a doctor, a pediatric oncologist, and a pharmacologist, and he worked out of Yale and the Brigham, so both big systems. And while he was doing that, Dean was in high school, and he would come home on the weekends to Dean's house in Long Island, and would tell him that, I need to give these little itty bitty babies, chemotherapy. And chemo at that time would go in, you had to dilute it in a liter bag of fluid because there was no way to accurately deliver it. And obviously a little tiny baby that isn't a liter of person can't take a liter of fluid. So Dean built the first drug delivery device was based on a very precise motor and syringe, and the syringe would move and deliver tiny bits. And so Bart would run these things around the hospital, and one day other doctors would see it, and one day a very, very smart endocrinologist, I really wish I remembered his name, saw this and said, I need this for my patients with diabetes. And he was also smart enough to realize that the best way to get kind of approval or clearance was to use the pump in pregnant women with gestational diabetes, because proving that the continuous delivery of insulin, which we all take now for granted as the best way of delivering insulin, that was unproven in the 1970s. And trying to prove that would have been a very long, very expensive trial. And this very smart endocrinologist said, hey, we can just prove that women who are pregnant with type 1 diabetes who never were able to carry babies to term can carry babies to term. And so, Dean made him a bunch of pumps. 9 months later, a bunch of kids popped out, and the rest, as they say, is history. And Dean loves to tell the story of he would bake he'd bake the circuit boards in his mother's oven at home, and Mom would get home and be like, "I smell methylene chloride again." And so after a bit of time, and sort of people started calling, and his mom actually was a teacher who taught business at the local high school, became sort of the business manager. They set up a company. He got some engineers working for him in some lab space at Republic Airport, and turned it into what became auto syringe.
I went to Medtronic a month ago and I saw the auto syringe, and I had no idea at the time that Dean Kamen had invented that. So it's kind of full circle coming into this interview and hearing more about that. And then that led to a wearable pump, and then all of the pumps we have today. So that's pretty cool. Let's kind of get into the sequel, this new pump. Now, this pump was already built in some way for something else, right? Like Dean came out with this latest form factor for something else, right?
Well, I would say a little bit differently. He developed the device, and then it was pretty clear that the device was useful for more than just insulin. So he started working with United Therapeutics to put treprostinil in the device. And that's a little bit of a simpler exercise for a couple of reasons. One, it doesn't require as much of an algorithm in order to drive dosing. And for a bunch of different reasons, insulin is one of the more challenging molecules. It's very sensitive. So the compatibility testing is a little bit more arduous. So it wasn't that it was one pump that was then converted to use for insulin. The idea was always that this would be a great device for multiple different compounds, but insulin was always like top of mind for us because the ability to, well, there's a lot of processing power on this device, so the ability to run algorithms natively on the pump to adjust drug dosage in response to a physiologic stimuli was always where we wanted to be.
Okay, but this pump is being used for, is it a drug called Remodulin for hypertension? Can you just tell us a little?
Yeah, that's right. Treprostinil is the generic name. The
Okay.
brand name is Remodulin. The pump is called Remunity, and it's marketed by United Therapeutics
Gotcha.
for Remodulin. Remodulin is for pulmonary arterial hypertension, really serious disease where the blood pressure in the lungs gets too high, and you really need consistent, continuous therapy in order to avoid real bad problems.
Interesting. All right, let's get into this pump because I know everyone listening is very excited to hear about it, as am I. So, why did you decide to call this pump Twiist?
So this is the pump. I'm just holding it in my hand.
Oh, wow, it's super small.
Yeah, and for reference, I'm not 6 feet 9 inches tall. I cannot palm a basketball. It's about, a little over 1 3/4 inches. So we called it Twiist because it's got two pieces to it, the top piece and the bottom, and you twist it and it opens. And then you do that. The top is reusable. It has the battery and kind of the brains. And the bottom part is where the insulin is held. It's the delivery path of fluid, and it has all the measurement chambers. So we called it Twiist because it describes, well, one, it's not, I like it because it describes the motion. It's hard to do it in two directions, but it describes the motion of how you open it. It's also less of a, I think, intimidating name than some other names on the market that are more engineering focused. Like, there's no reason a medical device has to be scary or intimidating or otherwise. It's a little, I don't want to say whimsical, but it's just a little less, more user friendly, I think.
Yeah, do you mind showing it like super kind of this close to the screen? And I'm just going to explain it too. So and then can you just kind of twist it around?
Yeah.
So it looks like it's,
you can see it, which makes it a little bit hard to hold it, but that's the way it opens. It has a ring that seals it, so it's watertight. So you can take this in the shower. You can go in the pool.
well, that's a big difference between, I think, some of the other pumps out there. So like, do you expect people to be able to do some short swims with this or, take it into the ocean?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. That's very neat. Are you going to have accessories for this that allow it to be clipped on a bathing suit, different things like that?
Yeah, so we have a whole suite of accessories that'll be available when we launch, like summer belt clips. Yeah, so this fits in that coin pocket, the fifth pocket of men's jeans that no one knows what to do with. You got something to do with it. We also have a belt clip for it, and we have a really nice adhesive that you put on your arm or your belly, wherever you want to put it, that you could then clip this into, and it stays very stable. It doesn't move. The nice thing is you can move it around if you want without losing the insulin. So, particularly for people who are wearing different kinds of clothes, if one day you have a blazer on and you can put it under a shirt, great. If the next day you're wearing, a crop top and you want to put it somewhere else, if the next day you're wearing a sleeveless dress, you move it around, and you can do that without losing insulin, without throwing everything away. So it creates a lot of flexibility. And so we're really excited about the ability for people to personalize how they wear the device and what makes sense for them. And it's like not everyone has pockets all the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know a lot of this, so this is very exciting news. How many units can fit in the device, and how long does, and then let's go into infusion sets with like kind of how long they last, but first units.
So this device holds 300 units or 3 cc's of fluid as it stands today. So I would probably say it's the only thing that you can comfortably wear on your body that holds that much insulin.
Yeah, and then infusion sets.
So the infusion set, we have a number of infusion sets that are in our user guide for launch, the Clio 90 and others. The label on launch will be for 3-day wear, and of course, like everyone else, that's something that we're going to be working on extending, especially with a 3 cc reservoir. We also have, not for launch, but for next year, we have a proprietary infusion set at the FDA right now that will have a whole bunch of advantages that we're probably not ready to talk about, but we're super excited about it. So the goal in everything that we're doing is to make this really easy for people to use, and creating choice for people about how they want to use it, where they want to use it, how much they want to interact with the algorithm. This is really about personalization.
Amazing. Ages for the pump.
Right now
You can
we're
wear
6 above.
Okay. And is there any physical button on the device that allows for any controls?
Yeah, so there's it's a little hard, it's gonna be hard to see, but that little grayish blue button, I'll bring
Can
a
you
little
show
bit
us?
closer.
Here, bring it right in the center of the screen. So
But then it blocks my
perfect.
face. So
No one cares.
exactly, probably it's a benefit to the video watchers. That little button allows you to give a bolus.
Okay. Do you have any more information on how that may work?
So so basically it gives a unit bolus, and it lets you know, and you just basically, you can very discreetly squeeze it. Now, we also have the ability to bolus off the Apple Watch. So the idea being, if you're if you're in a place where you want to be discreet about your condition, you don't want to pull your phone out, you can bolus off the pump, and you can bolus off the watch.
Yeah, on that note, let's kind of get into the algorithm. So I recently re-released an episode all about Tidepool Loop, which is the algorithm that Sequel MedTech is using for the Twiist pump. It derives from the DIY community, from DIY Loop. So if listeners haven't heard that yet, you got to go listen to that, because that really dives deep into the algorithm. But there's a few things I still want to ask you that we didn't cover, and I'm sure there's some updates. I hear that you placed the algorithm on the actual pump device rather than leaving the algorithm on the phone. Why did you decide that?
So 100% correct, Justin. What we embedded the algorithm on the silicon on our pump, and we did that for a bunch of reasons. Probably the biggest one is, if you are away from your phone or your phone dies, you're still in hybrid closed loop control, right? So you're not dependent on having your phone next to you and charged every second or within Bluetooth range. Because even, you can imagine if you're swimming in the ocean, you probably don't have your phone with you. That's kind of the biggest reason we thought. And then we thought, from a security perspective, it created a much more cyber secure infrastructure.
Okay. And when it comes to the Apple Watch being able to control the boluses, Dexcom just released direct to watch. Is there a future where you can leave your phone behind and still use the Apple Watch to control boluses and read your CGM readings?
So that's a great question. And what I would say is there's a pretty long development path for the things that we want to add to it. We are not at the direct to watch phase yet for full control. It's certainly something that's on our roadmap. Because to your point, it would be really nice to be able to do that.
Yeah. And so I know that when it comes to the application that's going to be used on the phone, it is not the Tidepool Loop app that you'll be using. You'll be using your own Twiist app that resembles it in some way. Are there any major differences between these two applications? Same algorithm.
Yeah, so I would say I don't think there are major differences between. Do you agree with me, John? I have my phone a friend here. There aren't major differences, right? I mean, there's a few differences in terms of registration screens and things like that. The core look and feel and user interface is extraordinarily similar to the Tidepool app, just because, again, to your point, developed by people living with diabetes, for people living with diabetes. There's a large community of people who are familiar with it and like using it. And it's a great algorithm with great results. And it gives you the right level of flexibility and personalization to interact with it as much or as little as you want.
Yeah. I know that Tidepool is actively working on creating an Android app for this. And I mean, majority of the world is on Android. In the US, I believe it's 70% are iPhone, but in the world, iPhone really only represents 25%. Are you working on Android, or is that in your plans?
Yeah, so Android is definitely on our roadmap, and so there's a bunch of things you want to do. From our perspective, there's a bunch of things we want to do on the iOS app. Get it where we want it to be. It really make sure it's optimal. And then bring an Android app on board and keep those two. Obviously, you want to keep them perfectly aligned for all sorts of good reasons. So we're working on an Android app, and I don't have a good time frame to tell you, but I think most people who've done this, have said it takes a good year to port from one platform to the other in either direction.
People always ask me, Justin, how do you keep on your diabetes technology? And it's a simple answer. Skin Grip. And that is why I partnered with them to sponsor today's episode. I use Skin Grip's adhesive patches to keep my Dexcom and Omnipod extra secure, especially during the humid summer, swimming, cardio workouts, and they are a must pack on all of my vacations. Whenever I notice my tech beginning to peel off, I throw on a Skin Grip and I'm set. And I look good doing it because they come in a bunch of different colors, and for a more subtle look, they come in skin tone and clear options. I prefer the colors though because I match them with my outfits. Skin Grip has patches for all CGMs, tubeless pumps, and infusion sets. They're latex-free, hypoallergenic, and easy to apply. As a Diabetic listener, you'll get 10% off your order. To grab some for yourself, check out that link in today's show notes or go to skingrip.com and use code Justin10. Now, back to the show. I said earlier that I do have an episode that really dives into everything algorithm, but can you just kind of give us a little bit of an understanding of how this algorithm works, maybe works differently than others?
So I think the most important part of the loop algorithm is it's always doing a glucose prediction. And it's always looking at where your glucose is going to be in 6 hours, and how to based on what it knows, which could be a lot or a little depending on how much you interacted with it, about your carbs on board and your insulin on board, which obviously it knows precisely, what is going to happen. And it's always going to continually adjust your insulin, basal and boluses, to get to that optimal within range. So what's great about that is it doesn't require, it adapts in the moment, right? So you can imagine if you're sick, if you have asthma and you're taking steroids, all these things that impact your blood glucose and change your insulin needs. If you have an algorithm that's sort of, there's a lot of algorithms that try to learn you. And on one hand, that sounds really good. Oh, it learns me. But I don't know about you, but I'm not one person. There are days I travel, and there are days I don't eat, and so what I like about the loop algorithm is it's in the moment reacting to you and how you are right now and predicting where you're going to be. So that's one thing that's important. The second thing that I think is great about it is it has the widest range of targets. So 87 to 180. So if you're someone who really wants to get into really, really tight control, you have the ability to get, to set 87 as a target. Conversely, if you're super fragile or you're sick or you're not sure what's going to be going on because you're traveling across the world and you don't want to, okay, set it to 138, I don't know, whatever's right. That's the second thing I think is really important. The third thing that I think is really a relatively unique feature is this idea of retrospective carb adjustments, right? So if you do announce a meal and you get to pick, there are emojis that sort of describe the glycemic index of the meal, which is very cool also. But let's just say, you sat down to dinner and you thought you were going to eat 52 carbs. You know what? For whatever reason, you only ate 26. You can, within up to 6 hours, which would be unnecessary, but within a half hour, go, no, what? I didn't eat 56. I ate 20, or 52. I ate 26. And the prediction algorithm will take that into account and adjust your insulin appropriately. So, a lot of things, we talk a lot about people starting to use GLP-1s, even in type 1. And, GLP-1s have quite an impact on your appetite and quite a variable impact on your appetite. So that we think that's going to be a really nice feature. So those are the three things I think are most interesting. But it's overall great algorithm, great results. And it was made by people who live with this disease, so they really thought about it.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for people, when it comes to the app adapting, the latest form of the DIY app is mostly, I believe, it's correcting with like microboluses, but this is using the algorithm prior to that, which is more so basal corrections, correct?
Right, that's correct. So the difference really, there's two differences there. So one is the time frame, right? So the DIY, the current DIY will adapt. If you don't announce a meal and you have a big spike, the old algorithm probably takes about a half hour to raise your basal rate enough, and you have to be able to set the max basal rate. The newer algorithm allows for microboluses on the way up a little bit sooner. You end up in the sort of same place. You just have a little less of an excursion with what's they're calling it Loop 2.0. Now, I would say we are approved with the original Loop algorithm, right? The FDA, you have to approve a fixed algorithm, though we sort of definitely understand the interest in the newer features, and there's an obvious path to work with Tidepool, who we work very closely with, to incorporate that into an FDA cleared version as well. Not as fast as in the DIY community. On the other hand, it works out of the box, right? You don't need dongles, dingles, all sorts of stuff to connect, and you can be confident of support, etc. So they're definitely, like everything else in life, there's trade-offs everywhere.
Yeah, and for those listening, if you don't already know, like DIY Loop, this algorithm, the Twiist pump, is the first algorithm to truly come from the DIY space, be approved on an approved pump. Like this is huge news, and just the fact that we're getting that Loop algorithm that you have, and the potential to go further in that algorithm is very exciting. And what you brought up about being able to correct the carb inputs that you put, that was one of my favorite settings that I used when I was on DIY Loop. That like I totally took for granted. I didn't even think other people don't have that option. It's something I've been doing with DIY Loop, and I've even been doing it on IAPS, which is a new DIY system that I've been using.
The current FDA-approved Loop algorithm is a great algorithm. Loop 2.0 will have a couple of small features that I think will be nice, but the current DIY algorithm, the current approved algorithm, is a great algorithm that people who use it, get great results. So we're really excited about it. We're not temporizing, and we're not being like, oh, this is okay. We're really excited about the Loop algorithm.
Yeah, and on that note, I used the original one, loved it. So I kind of want to get some understanding on the FDA clearance. Well, first of all, this kind of came out of nowhere, or at least it seemed like that to me. Is that true? Like, were you really talking about this pump at all before FDA clearance, or was there like a strategy to this?
I mean, the strategy around Tidepool was partly clearance, because they had the clearance, or we thought they were going to get the clearance. They had the clinical data. But it was just as much that it's a great product, and the FDA really has been working hard to build these interoperability standards. So our ability to work with the FDA within the interoperability standards, bring something to market that the community wanted, was really important. The fact that it was a little bit faster, because we didn't have to do our own trial of our own algorithm, yeah, that made a difference. But it was more that this was a great algorithm that people wanted to use.
Okay, gotcha. And so did the FDA clearance that Tidepool received help speed up the process of the Twiist pump's approval?
That's a really good question. It's a little bit theoretic, right? Because I could say yes, but I could easily say, well, if we didn't go with the Tidepool algorithm, we would have done our own algorithm and done our own clinical studies, 3 years ago. So I think it was more that we loved the algorithm and the data that went with it. And it was, if not faster, it was certainly easier, right? It's easier than doing, another clinical trial.
Yeah. So the Twiist pump has FDA clearance. What exactly does that mean? Like, what's the next step from here?
Right. So we actually have several clearances, but in essence, we're cleared for the use with insulin in an AID system using the loop algorithm in patients 6 and above. So right now, what we're doing is we're preparing for launch of the product, and what I often remind people of is we're doing two pretty hard things at once. We're launching a product and we're launching a company. And so the company, really, I was employee number 1 on June 1st of 2023, and prior to that, the company existed really as a development company. So we have a lot of work to do just with enterprise resource planning systems and customer resource and building call centers and quality management systems and building relationships with the CGM manufacturers. So we have a ton of work to do on the company side, but we're excited. We're targeting the end of towards the end of this year, the second half as our launch time frame. There's still a lot of stuff that up in the air that could delay that, but we're pretty. I don't want to say pretty confident. We're hopeful, and we're certainly working really hard to make that a reality.
Awesome. CGMs. I know that Tidepool Loop was cleared for Dexcom G6, so I assume that's the same case with the Twiist using that algorithm. Now, Dexcom plans on discontinuing that CGM. I don't know when. Have you spoken to Dexcom about that? And do you have a plan for that?
Our pump is also cleared with the G6, not because of Tidepool, but because that's who we created the communication protocol with. We have been in conversations and in discussions with both manufacturers about connectivity for all of the AID-approved CGM systems. And to your point, the CGM manufacturers have their own product life cycles and timeframes, and that's certainly something we're keeping in mind as we move towards launch.
Okay, gotcha. Now, when it comes to the algorithm, you kind of mentioned that we will see updates in that, and I know it's probably a little early to get too deep into this, but do you have some sort of roadmap for when you'd like to see newer versions of the Tidepool Loop algorithm, like auto bolus, custom presets, which are different ranges and percent of basals you want, or anything beyond that, when we could kind of see that come over time?
Yeah, so we do. We have algorithms or algorithm development that are both consistent with the Tidepool development. So as I said, like kind of what Tidepool's calling Loop 2.0, we're working closely with them on. In addition, we're looking at algorithm adaptations that are able to take advantage of some of the unique features of and responsiveness of our device. So we have sort of a multi step path for algorithm improvement.
Okay. And then what about availability outside the US for CE mark?
So great question. Like I said, we're trying to do two hard things, which is launch a company and a product at the same time. A third hard thing is launching international. Now we are starting to, and we have a small team looking at the international regulatory landscape and to say, okay, let's start to look at how we build a launch strategy overseas. One of the things we're excited about in the U.S. is we will be launching through the pharmacy channel, which from an access perspective and an upfront patient cost is tremendously simplifies the experience. That's a little different overseas, so it adds another level of complexity with respect to the distribution methodology. And so we will definitely be overseas. I don't have a specific timeline yet because there's a lot of things that go into that decision on when and where and how. But we are very excited to bring this product to as many people around the world who would benefit from it as possible.
Now I want to move into the DIY community. I just want to get your thoughts on that. What do you think of that community?
I'm impressed by them. I mean, look, they've arguably created an algorithm that has, at worst, as good, if not better, performance than any other sort of expert professional algorithm created. So, look, I think I'm on a lot of different levels a big believer in crowdsourcing, and so I love the community. I love the fact that they were passionate about the need here, and not to sound like a commercial, but I'm really glad that we can bring a commercially available product that's got support and service and FDA clearance and everything that goes along with that to the community. And as the community continues to improve the algorithms, hey, we're always going to do it in a manner to meet the FDA clearances for all the obvious reasons, but we will continue to update and improve the algorithms. One thing that we didn't talk about, Justin, is that the algorithm updates we can make it over the air. Like, we don't need to do a hardware switch out. We are always cloud connected in a secure cloud. If someone does have an issue with their pump and they call our customer service, we can pull up your pump record and probably know before you do what the alarm is or what the issue is. So again, that whole idea of really creating not just a great drug delivery device, but wrapping an amazing service experience around it is really important to us.
With that said, how willing are you or is Sequel MedTech to listening to the DIY community and suggestions they may have on the algorithm or the pump as well?
Look, there's no better way to improve what you're bringing to market than listening to your customers. People who are living with this disease know what they need more. I'm a cardiologist by training, so I have an understanding of the disease. I've taken care of a lot of people with diabetes, but not like someone who's living with it. I'm excited, proud that a large number of the people in our company live with type 1 and joined because they're excited about the opportunity to use this device and be part of shaping it. So we'd be really excited for the DIY community to help us shape pump features, algorithm features, things that they wish existed in the world but don't. One of the things I love about Dean and DECA is if you give them a problem to solve, they will figure it out. I mean, the physics underlying this device are unbelievable. Like so incredibly elegant, but it's all hidden from everyone. So we make it really simple for the person, but behind the scenes, like the amount of work we're doing to measure precisely, like literally nanoliters of precision, like how much we're giving it's incredible. So, people like learn about this and want to make suggestions. We are all ears.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. I would love to do a more deeper dive into all the R&D and the precision that has gone into this device at some point. Maybe I come over to your headquarters and I can get a closer look, because that would be incredible. And I love doing stuff like that. This algorithm comes from the DIY space. And there is so much still happening in the DIY space. You already talked about bringing future iterations of the Loop app, but myself and a couple thousand other people are using a new system called IAPS. There's also Android APS. These algorithms have dynamic carb ratio, dynamic insulin sensitivity factor, unannounced meal technology, and they are incredible. People are using them without having to bolus. How welcoming is Sequel MedTech to working with the DIY community again to take one of these powerful algorithms that are open source and created because they want, pharma to take them? How open are you to saying, hey, let's take a look at IAPS. We want to get this FDA cleared for you, for our pump?
I'd love to do that. Look, if there's an algorithm that people want to use and it makes sense, and we can figure out the right way to do it, like I'm all for it.
Okay, cool. Then we're gonna have to talk after this call, because I think that IAPS is something you should look at. It's something that I'm currently using right now. Others, like I said, they're not bolusing, and they're getting over 80% time in range, which people aren't achieving when they do pre-bolus for food. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you more about that. But Alan, this was go ahead.
I'm sort of not, I don't want to I don't want to interview the interviewer, but is the IABS is the algorithm?
It's IAPS, iPhone Automated Pancreas System.
IAPS. So a couple of questions. Is it a static algorithm, or is it a black box kind of neural net algorithm?
It is, I think I'm answering this correctly. It is a dynamic app. There are settings that are constantly changing. It's adjusting your settings based off of the last 2 hours and the last 24 hours and the last 2 weeks, every 5 minutes.
We should definitely chat, because again, love our relationship with Tidepool, think the app is great, but like I said, the very first thing I said was we are all about creating options for people. And so if IAPS is an option people want, we can figure out how to get it cleared. People can choose among IAPS or Loop. It's easy enough for people to choose the algorithm they want to use for us. So absolutely eager, interested, willing, somewhere on that scale. We have to figure out the details of what it means and how hard it is, but I don't see a reason why we wouldn't look at the IAPS algorithm and figure out how to help get it approved.
Amazing. Alan, thank you so much. This was such an awesome conversation. I learned so much about this that I didn't know about, and I think everyone listening is going to be so intrigued by this. It sounds like a top contender, and that it really is bringing a lot of things kind of all into one package that we haven't seen before. So I'm eager to see it. I'm eager to try it. So we'll have to talk about that too. But thank you so much for coming on the show, and I hope to have you on the show again soon.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. We'd love to come back again. And, I guess I would tell you, Justin, I look at this market and go, only about 30% of people or 35% of people who are candidates for AIDs are using them. A big chunk of people who are using any one device will change in any given year. So to me, it feels like there's a real unmet need. And that doesn't mean that the current devices aren't good, that's not what I'm saying. Is that there's an unmet need, And I think bringing more choice to the market, different technologies, newer technologies, creates the opportunity to get more people on AID systems. Of course, I'd love them to use Twiist because I think it's the best one, but we want to get more people on AID systems. We want to have people living healthier, living better. So that's what we're here to do, and I really appreciate you taking the time to learn about what we're doing, and we will definitely be in touch.
Sounds great. I hope you're as excited about this pump as I am. I want to see it myself in person, and that very well could happen soon, so stay tuned. If you want to learn more about the Algorithm Tidepool Loop, I've got an entire episode on this podcast with Howard Look, the CEO of Tidepool. You can learn all about the algorithm there. I'll throw that in the show notes. I also will have more on the Twiist, so stay tuned. Would you wear this pump? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget, I've got that Discord where you can talk with other diabetechies about all diabetes technology and the content that I put out. There's a link to that in the show notes. And I've also got that Patreon for exclusive content and behind the scenes looks at what I'm working on. Episodes of this podcast release every Monday wherever you listen, and on YouTube. There's a link to my YouTube channel and social accounts in today's show notes. I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.